use the Photomerge. There's a couple different ways of doing this through either Bridge or through Camera Raw, so I'll show you both methods. These were some photos I took at Point Reyes National Seashore. So basically I'm just hand holding and using a vertical frame, and then I'm just taking multiple frames, making sure that they overlap over each other. And so I'm basically just hand holding, shooting just vertical frame, like click, 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 as I pan across this scene. And so what I want to do is be able to get it to a point where it goes to here. And so we got a nice stitched together photo merge. So I'm going to select my first photo. I'm going to go to my last photo, hold down shift, so it selects all these photos. So the two methods, and you might want to test each one. So in Bridge, I'm going to go up to Tools. I want to go to my Photoshop Tools, and then down to where it says Photo Merge. And so with Photo Merge, it'll give you a window, so it'll open up Photoshop, and you can try the auto method. There is different ways it can merge these photos. And then it's basically saying I'm going to use these files. Do I want to blend images together? Hit check. Do I want to remove a vignette? Do I want to remove certain angle distortions? Do I want to content aware fill transparent areas? So in the corners, you might have areas it's missing just because of how it merged it together. So you could click this and then hit OK. Then it's going to cycle through your photos. It may take a bit, depending on how many photos you used, depending on the resolution of those photos. And so it's basically analyzing each photo, figuring out where each photo overlaps on the sides, and then which pieces of each photo to use in this photo merge. Then it'll blend those layers together, and then it will add in extra little pieces on the edges and content aware fill those in. So it's going through, and you can see on my layers it's adding more and more of those photos. Just going to let it cycle through. And then it'll create a new document that is obviously much wider. So you might come across situations where it doesn't work and it has an error. If that's the case, it's probably because your photos don't have enough overlap on the edges. There's not enough overlap between the first photo and the second photo where it can kind of stitch it together. So basically, if you shot it too far apart, you just need to go back and shoot closer frames. So now it's going to align all these layers together and start blending them together. So I did use a lot of photos. You wouldn't need to use as much, but it was a pretty wide scene, so that's why I took so many vertical photos. Give it a second. Come on. There we go. It's going to output it. There we go. And if I look at my layers now, you'll see the different photos from the far left to the far right. And then you will see little layer masks, and basically it'll show you each little section of each photo it used. So the white section will be which part it used. Come on, buddy. Sorry Sorry, it's going slow. Sometimes it goes quicker too if you have a faster internet connection because it is processing things through the cloud. Come on. So feel free to skip ahead. Come on. As you can see in these corners, there's clear pixels, meaning there's nothing there. So what it's going to do is it's going to use content aware and fill in those gaps on each of the edges, so on the corners. Here we go. Should pop it out. It might auto trim for you, which basically means it's auto cropping. And then it's going to content aware fill in all these corners. And again, if it does a poor job, filling in the corners, you can always go back and use the clone stamp tool or the helium brushes, or just crop it off, if it doesn't look right. So sometimes it will do a good job, sometimes it won't. There we go. So you can kind of see with the marching ants which parts it filled in. And then so I'm just going to go, and you'll see in my layers which pieces it used from each of those layers. I'm just going to go to select and then deselect. So depending on how it did, I can always, crop the photo depending on, how well it did. So I can always go in and crop it. Actually did a good job, so I'm going to leave it. I could, go over the corners and use clone stamps or heal tool. This one is pretty clean. You might have busier scenes where it doesn't do a good of a job, and sometimes you might see issues with your horizon. But what I'm going to do is just put these layers together. So I'm just going to go layer, flatten image, and then I'm just going to save this out. Let's call this point res pan 1. So if I want to do some global adjustments on this, I could go to layer, duplicate layer, and then I'm just going to go to my camera raw filter, and then obviously, I can do a variety of adjustments in camera raw. Because this is a merge, it is a much bigger file, so you will kind of notice that. There we go. There's some contrast. And then hit OK. And then you can always save out the newer version or make a version 2. But because it is a much bigger file, it might be a little slower, just a heads up. So the other method for this one, I'm going to show you where I shot some horizontal shots. So these ones are all verticals, vertical frames that overlapped each other. So this one I shot horizontal frames, and I just kind of panned over. So you can see a lot of these, edges overlap. So I'm going to go from the last one, hold down Shift, select the first one. So this one I'm going to right click and open in Camera Raw. We're going to click on the 3 dots and choose Select All or press Command A. So all these should be highlighted. I'm going to click on the 3 dots again, and we're going to do Merge to Panorama. So Command M. So, and then basically Camera Raw is going to analyze these photos and merge it as needed. And then I'll put a little preview just so you can kind of see what it's going to generally look like. So we're going to let that go through those photos, figure out how it wants to merge it. So again, you could use vertical frames. You can use horizontal frames. You can choose between a spherical blend, a cylindrical blend, a perspective blend. So it just depends on how you shot it, what it'll do. Do you want it to fill in the edges? So if you click that, it'll fill in these edges. Do you want to apply auto settings? I usually leave that off because I want to do that myself. And then you'll notice it'll look a lot better once we click merge. So we're going to hit merge. It's going to save it as a DNG, just save it in the right folder. And then it'll go through, and then you'll notice that these will blend out once it's fully processing. You'll see the status bar here, so it's about halfway through the blue bar. So just let that go through. And then once it's fully processed, you can again do all your global changes to it. And then we're just going to open it into Photoshop and then save it out correctly. So you might want to save it as a TIFF if you want it uncompressed, or as a JPEG for a smaller file size. I'd recommend JPEGs just so you're not burning up room on your computers. So we're about 2/3 done. And I did notice when I did this before that it kind of made some weird stuff on the street line here, and this looks kind of repetitive here, so I might use some of the healing tools in Photoshop just to kind of clean that up. Almost there. Come on. You can also see a status bar down here too, in the bottom left. There we go. So once it's through, I'm actually going to fix kind of the horizons kind of tilted, so I'm just going to go to my crop tool and just kind of straighten that out. I could apply some settings. And then I'm just going to open that into Photoshop. So it'll open up that DNG. So you will have a new file in your folder that'll be something emerge or panorama or this pano1.dng. So again, we could correct some of these items. So maybe I'm going to use the healing brush tool. It kind of repeated some stuff, so I might want to grab some fresh stuff and kind of just give it some different kind of non-repeated sections in here. This one I'm going to use the clone stamp tool. And then kind of just bring this line down. Let's up the flow. There we go. And then let's just maybe heal out this repeated dude, like so. So you might need to fix some of those edges. Once you're done, just make sure you save this as either a TIFF or a JPEG. I'm just going to do a JPEG just so you save it correctly, and it will be a smaller file. And then your quality, and then hit OK. So that's kind of the two methods for photo merges. And then here is my Pano1, and then my JPEG. So the JPEG is what you would upload to Google Drive once you're finished. Obviously, you can size this down too. So if it's too big of a file, you can just go to image size. So 10,000 pixels is pretty huge. Let's maybe bring it down to like 4,000 pixels. And then hit OK. It's still a big file. So this is 100% view. And then I could save this as a sized version. And that's the one I upload. Like so. So then I should have my DNG that processed from camera raw, my JPEG, which is 25 megabytes, so it might be too big. So my size one's down to 5 megabytes. I could make that smaller if I needed to, but that way I'm saving some room. So those are kind of the two methods, going through either your tools, Photoshop, and then Photomerge, or open them into camera raw and Photomerging in there. And so, cool, thanks.